Hi, I'm Harry here with cybersport.com. To my right is a legend in his own right, SirScoots, and we are at the PGL Major in Krakow. Already it's been one hell of an event, but I was really curious, to hear, based on how things have been running, we've heard a mixture of stuff, be it on Twitter and the likes. How have you found the event, personally?
I mean, most of the majors that I've worked, I've kind of been the desk host. I did a bunch in the early days of Counter-Strike, and I did one interview job. So I'm here working, I'm doing interviews. So for me, it's great. It's like a free ride to come. I get paid to be here. I'm not working that hard. It's much harder to be a desk host than an interview guy. So for me, it's been fantastic. A nice combination of work, and I get to watch amazing Counter-Strike. Been some technical issues, as there is at all Counter-Strike and other esports, but I think, they finally hit their stride, and things the last couple of days are rocking and rolling.
Yeah, and from my knowledge of working at PGL, they've generally been quite good at staying on top of issues. But some of the things we've heard on Twitter could lead us to believe otherwise, and that's what I was going to lead into next. And that's that a lot of kind of the people towards the top have said that maybe the players need to be taught how to use Twitter better. I don't know if you've heard some of the cases for this, but I'm sure throughout your time you've seen some good examples. Is that something you could get behind? Just to kind of reinforce the integrity behind these brands and the teams.
Yeah, I don't think it's specific to this event, and I don't think it's specific to Counter-Strikers even. I think we live now in this instant gratification generation, Twitter, Instagram, all these things. So people vent about all sorts of things right away, I have a terrible airline experience. I nail that airline as hard as I can on Twitter, right? And everyone does that kind of stuff. So now you put yourself in a position of a young kid who in his mind has lost or is underperforming, not because of his own abilities, but maybe a PC issue, maybe an environment issue. Maybe he's blaming, but it really is internal, and they vent. I do have lots of talks with these guys, and the idea, I think, is to kind of, let's be as professional as we can, but it's really hard to tell. Like, I'm not sitting there. I'm not the one that just lost out on a bunch of money. I think in general, and again, I'm an offender too because I love my Twitter timeline. I think as we get a little older, not necessarily age-wise, but just in industry-wise, we all need to grow up a little bit in how we address the public with our concerns, whether you're a tournament organizer, whether you're a team owner, or definitely when you're a player. I mean, being an ex-team owner, certainly, these players are your brand ambassadors. They represent their own brand, but they certainly represent your brand and then all your sponsor brands. So in a perfect world, you want them to act like glorious gentlemen and gentle ladies. But it's much easier said than done when they're the ones actually competing and they have that stress, right? But, to answer your question, I think in general, yeah, it would be nice if the players dealt with their concerns in a more private way. And I'm helping the players kind of form a player association for Counter-Strike, not the other esports, and that's definitely part of even the players and I talk about it. It's like we need to let's be the most professional people in the building, right? And again, long way to go on that. But I think that carries it all. When you get into organized sports in the sense of like one league and those kind of things, there's all sorts of fines and regulations for that kind of stuff. So sure, if you want to pop off, you can pop off, but there's going to be direct repercussions to that. Maybe we get there, and maybe some of these kids are sending these tweets out and then still getting fined by their team owners back home. Who knows, right? I mean, I used to run Evil Geniuses. We had Huck and Idra on our team. We had our definitely share of social media incidents, forum incidents, etc. And I think they know it. Like, these kids understand like the negative side of it, but like that vent comes, right? And then they go, oh, I shouldn't have done it. So, trying to grow everybody up, I guess, is what we all should be doing.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more in that regard. You also mentioned the Players Union, and that's something that I've always found to be very interesting, especially because there's also talks about the idea of having some sort of talent union as well at some point down the line. But the Players Union is something I've always been very curious about. What's kind of been your main reasons for trying to sort one out, and also what are the main goals that you hope to accomplish through doing so?
Well, I mean, I think one of the main reasons is the players kind of reached out and asked me. They've been talking about it for a while. Everyone in the scene has been talking about it for a while, right? And again, it just parallels traditional sports. Every professional sport on the planet has some sort of player association, and it takes care of and manages that labor force, right? It defends them, it looks out for them, it babysits them, it does all those things for them, right? It monetizes them when you get into the big leagues. And so the idea, especially in Counter-Strike, we don't have a one league system. We don't have an NFL or an NBA or a FIFA or anything. So we've got all these tournament organizers, right, that are all vying for the space. They all want to do as much Counter-Strike as possible because, again, that's where the content is, where the money is, right? So the more content you do, the bigger the piece of the pie is for you, the more the sponsors love you, et cetera. And that's all well and good. But the one thing that is unified is the players, right? They all go to these different tournaments. So like the one thing that can unify would be them. You know, you're not going to see all the tournament organizers join one big happy family, and you're not going to see all the team owners join one big happy family. But the players are all, you know, very unified in what they do. They just do it at different places. So the idea is to kind of, you know, get that ball rolling, you know, get all sorts of resources available to these guys eventually, you know, legal assistance, all these kind of things. So again, as the entire sport grows up, you know, we kind of grow up that side of it. All the team owners, all the tournament organizers talk about it's just like sports, it's just like sports, we want to be sports. They're getting sports investment money, right? Well, you can't have that conversation and then not think that a player association just goes hand in hand with it, because in the real world, it does go hand in hand with it. So just kind of want to help them organize their voice, right? And it's not necessarily to put anyone out of business or, you know, stomp our feet and say we're the players. It's just to make sure they always have a seat at these negotiating tables, because they are the sport. There would be no professional Counter-Strike without professional Counter-Strike players. If they all quit, you and I could not replace them because no one would watch, right? Just like sports, there's a difference there, right? So they've recognized they have the need to kind of unify their voice. You know, they don't necessarily always agree on everything, and they certainly don't necessarily like each other in servers, but outside the server they get that they all do the same job, and if they help unify, and it could be rule sets, it could be all sorts of things, it will make their lives easier, and even to the point where they might retire, but in 5 years they know the next kid that comes up through the system maybe has a little better road. The guys that got burned years ago in bad contracts, maybe we stop that kind of stuff eventually, right?
Yeah, so it's all kind of making it less potential for players to be exploited, and easier and a more kind of fluid industry for people trying to move into it. Less of a beast is what it is now, essentially, right?
Yeah. Again, just kind of organizing that side of it. I mean, we do see a certain sides of it organizing, like WESA is an organization that's put together some teams, and ESL. PEA tried to kind of organize a bunch of teams into their own little association. So other people are kind of grouping up, so it just makes perfect sense. The labor force of the sport should get organized.
Yeah. And, you know, lastly, this is more of a personal one from me. I've always thoroughly enjoyed your work at events. A lot of other people have, and, you know, I think a lot of people are glad to have you here on board at the Major. Do you see yourself doing any more work, you know, in the future? I know we spoke a little bit about it yesterday, but I'm just curious to hear, you know, why did you kind of take a step back from it all?
Well, I mean, I guess I took a step back from it because I financially could. And the reality of it is, you know, what I generally did, you know, in front of the camera for Counter-Strike was I ended up being a desk host for several years, right? I was one of the first kind of hosts that was doing it. But then, like, I very quickly got, you know, eclipsed in my mind, skill-wise, by guys like Red Eye, guys like Machine, and Richard Lewis, right? And I have no ego when it comes to what I do on that desk. Like, I'm a certain type of host, I'm a certain flavor of host, I'm a little older than everybody. So when I see my friends getting the gigs, like, that's great for me. Like, I'm just a Counter-Strike fan. So sitting at home and watching Richard or Paul or Alex, it's all good to me. So I don't pursue them. Like, I don't reach out and, hey, you guys need any help? Like, I usually am the guy they call when someone can't make it, right? Like, they decided they wanted me to do interviews because I did them a couple years ago at the Major, so I said, yeah. And so I guess, you know, being kind of retired, it's not something that I actively pursue. I guess if I did knock on more doors, I might get a few more gigs, but, you know, it's not really my focus right now. If they ask me, I'm delighted to come, but like, I was going to come anyway as a fan of this one, just like I went to E-League in Atlanta. Like, just wanted to check it out.
There you go. So you really do just have the passion, and if the work's there, you'll do it. But if not, you'll fine. That's fantastic. And you know, if you're a fan, feel free to head on over to cybersport.com, where you can catch all the latest news articles and interviews and the like. Scoots, it was fantastic having you on, buddy. Thank you very much for that, and see us in the next one.